Hey, it's Brent with the Downing Group. This week we're going to talk about economies of rental properties. Should I rent to where I live? Should I buy rental properties and so forth? So welcome back to the channel. With all of the interest rate talk lately, and we're in February of 2024, there's quite a few people who are waiting for interest rates to come down. And in one of our previous videos, I gave you a kind of a rundown of what I expected this year. Those expectations have tempered a bit because inflation and the employment figures have turned out a little bit more unfavorable than what they were. That said, some people are on the sidelines waiting to buy for these interest rates to come down. And I just wanted to go through some of the economies of what that means for them, and also add a little bit about, should you buy rental properties and how does that look? So let's dig into it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use like an average sales price home of around 300,000. That's what roughly the average sales price is in the Midlands and upstate of South Carolina. And so in one scenario, I'm going to have you buy it, and in another scenario, I'm going to have you rent it. So let's take that $300,000 sales price, and let's assume that if you buy it, you're going to pay like, say, 6% interest rate. Okay. What that means, the total payment for you will be roughly, okay, $2,100 a month, $2,150-ish. Now that's comprised of principal of about $300 a month that you pay down on your mortgage in the first year, and that number goes up over time. Okay. The interest in the first year is roughly $1,500 a month, which, by the way, is tax deductible as long as you're not in a super high income earner. And then you have taxes, property taxes, roughly $150 a month. Again, deductible on your taxes. And then insurance, and I'm going to guess that your insurance would cost about $100 a month. Okay. This is, of course, $3,600 a year. Your interest deduction, that times 12, I think is 18,000 per year, if I'm doing my math right. Your taxes are another 1,800 a year, and then 1,200 a year. Okay. Now, that same property roughly is going to rent for about $2,500 a month. Okay. So this is the buy side, and this is the rent side. Same $300,000 property. In these markets, costs roughly $2,500 a month, or $28,000 a year total outlay of cash. Can you see that, all these numbers, Lindsay? Okay. In this case, it's just under $26,000, I think, outlay. Now, the things to think about here. Number one is, of course, there's a $2,000 difference per year in cash outlay. Now, one factor when you own, you also have maintenance. Okay. Something breaks, you got to fix it. So you have to also factor in, if you buy some old house that needs a new air conditioner or something like that, factor that in. Now, here's some of the master class on how to figure some of this out. Okay. So you have your $2,000 per year. I'm going to go at this from a net worth perspective and a cash flow perspective. Okay. Cash flow first. You're going to be able to deduct, first of all, this $3,600 per year is a plus compared to this scenario. In this scenario, you get none of this money back. It goes out, never comes back to you. In this scenario, it's like a savings account. Call it at 0% interest, but at least you're paying this mortgage off. So eventually, and as the years go by, that ends up being, per month, it's more principal that you're paying off and the interest goes down. So already we're at $5,600 a year better than if we rent. One thing though, one advantage to renting is if you don't know where you're going to be or if you're going to stay somewhere very long, then renting may be a good option. Okay. Here's the other thing. When I said this is deductible on your taxes, this $18,000 a year, let's take an average tax rate of, say, I don't know, 30%, an effective tax rate, which means after you take all your deductions and all that, your tax rate ends up being 30% of your income. You get to take that off of your income when you pay your taxes, in essence. So let's say you make 100 grand a year, and you have to tell Uncle Sam that you made 100 grand a year and your taxes are 30 grand that year. Okay, 30%. Well, in this case, that's an extra deduction for you versus renting. So that $18,000 comes off of that 100 that you report to Uncle Sam. Now you get to tell them basically that you're making $82,000 a year. Or, in other words, 30% of that number, which I think is roughly $5,400 a year, is less taxes you pay per year. Sorry, I'm trying to write sideways. Okay. Also, this $1,800 property tax is deductible usually. So again, 30% of that is $540. Now, here, so right now we have roughly 11,000 bucks. I'm not going to add it all up, but you get the point. $11,000 minus any maintenance costs that you have in that ownership of that property versus renting. Okay. Now, here's a big one. Do a screenshot of this if you want, or take a picture of it with your phone. And I'm happy to field any questions you may have if you want to call me and say, how did you come up with that? And again, these are all estimates. I'm not a tax attorney or a CPA or anything, but this is generally how I look at it. Now, this is the buy versus rent on cash flow. How much cash is going in and out of your bank account? Let's talk about net worth now. Okay. Let's say this is a graph of value of the property over time. And you start out at time equals 0 at 300,000, let's say. Real estate over time has been shown to appreciate at roughly 6 to 8% a year on average. In the last decade, it's probably more like 12 or 13%. Okay. But, there are times where it could depreciate, instantaneous times, like a few years, like in 2008 when the big crash happened and all that, it went down in South Carolina, probably 25%, 30%. Now it ran up like 40% before that. Okay. And since, that it bottomed out in 2011, I think the appreciation is probably, it's at least double. Okay. So a house that was 300K back then is probably worth more like 600K now. So, but if you do 8% a year, let's say, the value of this home is going to steadily increase. Okay. So after 1 year, 8%, now that's worth $324,000, right? After 2 years, now that's, 8% more of that is roughly another 435 grand. So now it's worth 360 grand. Okay. And meanwhile, you are paying off that mortgage. So you owe, after the first year, you're going to owe $3,600 less on that mortgage. So the amount that you owe over time goes down, you see. And what you're doing is building the difference between what you owe and what your house is worth is net worth. you see? So, okay, we already took credit for this $3,600 a year. So first of all, we're going to have $24,000 in appreciation in the first year if we're at 8% appreciation. Okay. So we have that, plus we have this $11,000. So we're to the plus $35,000. Now we also have these payments going out, okay, which are $21,000. Okay. So that gives us a net increase in net worth of $14,000 a year. Okay. Now, compared to renting, when we're looking at minus $28,000 per year, because you get no deductions, you get no appreciation, nothing. So the overall difference between the negative 28,000 in net worth versus that is a positive $42,000 in net worth over time. Now, that keeps accelerating. I mean, 8% over compounded annually. I mean, after 10 years, you'd blow your mind on how much that's worth. Okay. So these are some really big things to be thinking about. If you've never thought about rental property or, buying versus renting, this is a good way to look at it long term. Now, again, I'm not a CPA. I'm not a tax advisor. I'm not an expert in any of that. This is just my take on how this works. So if we can help you with any of this, you have any questions, any kind of real estate needs whatsoever, we'd love to help you. Call us or DM us on our Facebook page at the Downing Group. Have a great week.